And welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast. Jim Comparoni, Paul Conradike, myself, Jim Comparoni from State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia. Paul back near East Lansing, Michigan, back in Michigan. Thanks for joining us, Paul. Appreciate you checking in with us and helping us here with the VCast. Michigan State losing tonight to number one ranked Kansas, 77-69. Michigan State never led in this game, tied it a couple times in the second half, did some pretty good things in a lot of ways, but couldn't get over the top for various reasons. Chief among them is poor shooting, of course. Everybody, y'all saw the game. Michigan State was 3 out of 24 from three-point range, but 18 of 21 from the foul line. But 3 out of 24 from three-point range. Earlier in the game, I think 1 out of 16 or 1 out of 17 at one point. And Paul, in the pre-tip read, by the way, Paul, great job with your pre-game articles that you wrote, and Jake Laskow and the job you guys are doing. Really appreciate that. In the pregame story, I mentioned that, for Michigan State to hang with what is a very talented Kansas team that did not play well either, Michigan State was going to need, to find that B-plus game, A-minus game, which means Akins being hot, which means Booker being hot, which meant Holloman being hot, because there would be some shots and you'd need to make them against this team. Everybody was cold from long range. And if you'd have told me that before this game, I would have assumed Michigan State was going to lose by 15 or 20 or 25 points. That didn't happen. Like I said, Kansas didn't shoot great either. But Michigan State did some things well to hang in this game. But the shooting, you just can't win games, especially against top 10 teams shooting like that. Paul, what did you think?
Yeah, the one thing I wrote about before this game is that I went back and looked at the history of the Champions Classic, and Michigan State was 5-8, 5-9 now all time in the Champions Classic, and I could only think of one time where Michigan State shot lower than 30% from three or 25% from three and won a game in the Champions Classic, and that was I think that was in 2015 maybe, or no, it wasn't 2020 against Duke. And Duke had an abnormally cold shooting night for Duke. They shot even lower than Michigan State did on that night. And those were two teams that weren't very good, Michigan State and Duke. And
That was during the
um,
COVID year at Cameron Indoor with no crowd, right?
yeah,
If
I think
they,
so. And that Rocket Watts had 20 points in that game, and I forgot that he ever had a game where he had 20 points. But the point being, when you play this tournament or this setting, you have to hit open shots. And like Kansas didn't shoot great tonight, but they shot 30%. If Michigan State would have just shot 25% from three, they would have been right in this till the end. But a lot of people want to be. I've got a text tonight for people all upset about Jaden Akins and about what he did tonight. I felt like they defended him pretty good. He didn't get a lot of shots in this game. I think the thing that bothers me more about this performance is the number of open shots that were missed by other people, other options. We talk about that stretch four, and Xavier Booker and Jackson Kohler. Jackson Kohler, who did other things very well tonight, was Xavier Booker and Jackson Kohler combined. I think it combined 1 for 9 from
yes.
from three, and every single one of those looks was wide open. And so, it's easy to point the finger one way or another. And in some of these Champions Classics games, Michigan State shot a lot of threes, didn't make them, but they were playing against great defense. Tonight, what they ran on offense worked for the most part. Guys got open. There was plenty of second chance scoring opportunities, and shots just simply didn't fall. And even with that, they had a chance to stay with it in the second half. I just feel like down the stretch, with Trey Holloman and Jeremy Fears in foul trouble, Michigan State wasn't quite as good defensively with their guards because they couldn't afford to foul. And Kansas got a couple easier baskets at the rim. They got a couple threes in there, and that was enough to beat Michigan State. But I honestly go away from this game, if I'm Michigan State, saying, hey, you know what, some things worked pretty good, and we can build on that. And I'll go back to what Tom Izzo said on Tuesday or on Monday before he left. He was talking about give this team a month, and he'll feel he thinks he'll be in a good spot. This is the first time he used that terminology, like a month from now. So I think he feels like he's got the pieces, but these guys aren't all fitting together yet. And guys like Frankie Fiddler, we can talk about guards missing shots, and he's a wing guard, and he had some good looks today. And I thought, after he had that one pull up three, like as a trailer in transition late in the game, I thought, okay, here he goes. That's something that they're going to lose this game, but they can build on. And then he had two more shots after that he didn't make. So I think they just need a game or two where some shots are falling. but it's not just one single person. And, like we can talk to death about these guys being streaky shooters and there's no proven shooter. But there's been a lot of other Michigan State teams over the years where there's been no proven shooter until there is. And you don't need to be a proven shooter to make open shots. Like Xavier Booker, his one purpose on this team, with what his skill set is to make open threes. If he can't do that, if he can't hit open threes, he shouldn't be on the court. That's just the way it is. And if he's not doing the effort, energy type of stuff. But Michigan State has to make shots. It's not just the guards. That stretch three from the poor man position, that was there like consistently tonight. And that's what Michigan State has to use against good athletic teams like Kansas that usually take away your primary scoring option. That stretch component is a big deal. Some of the trailer stuff, some of the transition stuff. And like I'm not too worried about this if I'm Michigan State right now. But if this keeps on going for any significant period of time, then I start worrying, and then you got to start tinkering and saying, okay, does a Jace Richardson? How do we try to get him some more shots? Do we look at a Kurt Tang, a guy that's been a prolific shooter um, at the high school level? But the thing is guys that have made shots in practice are getting those same shots in games. They're just not making them, and until they do, it's going to be a problem.
Right. Somebody asked Izzo about the shooting, and last year, remember, Michigan State began the season with terrible 3-point shooting when they lost that game to James Madison. They were 1 of 22 from 3-point range. And Izzo, I didn't check this, but Izzo quote, these are sometimes Izzo figures. Sometimes he's wrong remembering stats, as am I. And he said, I think second game, Michigan State, after going 1 of 22, was 1 of 11 in the next game, and then 4 of 15 in the following game. Michigan State ended up in Big Ten play shooting over 35% from three, ended up being a pretty good 3-point shooting team. So it came around last year. Now you had Tyson Walker as part of that situation last year. Jaden Akins is the big focal point right now. Akins 1 out of 8 from the field, 0 for 4 from 3-point range. And Izzo made the point that, if you're not having a good shooting night, find some other ways to get it done. I mean, Akins had 0 rebounds. He had 1 rebound today, 0 offensive rebounds, 0 trips to the foul line. Watching Akins out there, he's giving good effort. Like Izzo said, he's a great kid, wants to do well, works hard. But sometimes the game just doesn't seem to come his way. And in addition to that, he's the lead guy on the scouting report for Kansas's defense, whether he's earned it or not. So that can make it a little bit tougher to find your offense. I asked Jaden Akins in the locker room after the game if he's noticing being the marked man a little bit more in terms of the opponent's defense. And he said, no, not really. He's not noticing that. And he says he should still be able to make the shots that he was getting. Izzo was pretty animated, disappointed with Akins on a few things. He thought he rushed a shot or two. He thought that he was fading on shots. Izzo talked about that earlier this week, something that kind of bothers him. So they're going to try to work Akins out of this slump. And for the first time, Izzo said, sometimes a senior or any players, but he said seniors in particular can begin to press. And Izzo says he is pressing a little bit right now. And it's something that Izzo's been concerned about, frankly, since about July and August, since they went to Europe to play in Spain through the exhibition games. Even in practices that we've seen, it's been a little bit of a struggle. I asked Akins if he feels like he's shooting well during his workouts, and he said yes, and he feels good about it, and he's just going to work his way through it and keep shooting because that's the only thing they can do, and that's what they need him to do. But you're exactly right. If the shooting doesn't get better, but Michigan State, Izzo's had some teams, not very often, but he's had some teams that have been functional and respectable and somewhat successful without being great shooting teams. Normally he needs that stretch four to be a big component, but some of those teams that haven't shot well, they've been killers in terms of defense and rebounding. Can this team with Frankie Fiddler and Xavier Booker starting, be a team that can deliver those brass tacks? That's the second part of the problem. And then you get to the point where, well, what, as Michigan State, what do we do well? And right now there's a couple guys doing a few things well, but they're not a brass tacks, tough physical team, although they did that pretty well at times tonight, and obviously not a good shooting team either. In terms of defense and rebounding, Izzo mentioned he was disappointed that Michigan State was out rebounded in this game, but they're out rebounded by 3 or 4. It wasn't a huge situation. He said he thought Kansas hurt them on the offensive boards, but actually Kansas only had offensive rebounds on 26% of their misses. They missed 41 shots or whatever it was. They took 41. They missed a ton of shots. and got 11 offensive rebounds, 26% offensive rebounds, which is a good figure for defensive rebounding for Michigan State on this night. So you've got a Michigan State team that only allowed 26% offensive rebounds and held Kansas to 40% shooting. Now, Kansas missed some open shots, dude, so they had a cold night. So how much is Michigan State's defense to be commended and complimented for the way they played tonight, holding Kansas to 40%? Does Michigan State deserve some credit for that, Paul? Are we seeing some semblance of a decent defensive team here?
I watched them against North Carolina, and North Carolina had some trouble with them. Like RJ Davis is one of the best scorers in college basketball, and he tends to rise in the big moments. He was 1 for 7 from three. He was the top of the scouting report for Kansas against UNC. I think UNC. You look at that roster, and you can see, like the transfers they brought in. I mean, you know what they needed. They needed 3-point shooters, and they brought in a whole bunch of guys within that 203 range, for a career. And those guys weren't hitting threes tonight either. So, sometimes we see in the Champions Classic, for whatever reason, it's a big type of deal, big type of moment. And guys don't shoot well in the NBA arena. There's NBA scouts all over the place. It's kind of like, it's a really, you're not used to, you don't have conference play yet. So you haven't played these huge games. And
Mhm.
sometimes guys get really amped up. As far as Jaden Akins goes, I'll go back to him. I don't really feel like he missed. I don't feel like he got a lot of great shots tonight. I don't think he took a ton of bad shots, but there's other guys that missed open shots too. So Jaden Akins can kind of be the poster boy for this. But what has Xavier Booker shot this year from three? I mean, he's had like that's all he does, and he's been at least over in maybe 2 straight games now. So
Yeah.
no, I understand the fixation with Jaden Akins, but a guy like Trey Holloman, he's got to hit.
Yes.
Frankie Fiddler, he's got to hit. And this is a small sample size, and sometimes this stuff tends to even out. But I was just thinking about this a few minutes ago before we got on this thing. I felt like last year with the team that Michigan State had last year, it was so perimeter oriented and so nothing else but perimeter
Hmm.
that if guys weren't hitting threes, it was an absolute end of the world. At least I feel like this team, they don't have to hit a huge percent from three, but you do have to hit a share of open shots. So you can take advantage of things like improved front court play. You can take advantage of things like getting to the line more often. Yeah, Jaden Akins didn't get to the line more often in this game, and he didn't get a lot of rebounds, but Frankie Fiddler did. I don't know how many rebounds there are to go around between Jaden Akins and Frankie Fiddler. Frankie Fiddler's getting 1 or 2 rebounds a game. Jaden Akins has gotten some rebounds tonight. Frankie Fiddler had 8 rebounds. That was a big deal for him. So I think there's a good team in there. I think they are. I don't think they're soft. But I do think that if you got when Xavier Booker's on the floor, you talk about Frankie Fiddler, you can only have one finesse player on the floor. And I don't think Frankie Fiddler is a finesse player by design. I think he's or by nature. I think he's getting used or accustomed to this level of play, this system. But when you put Frankie Fiddler and Xavier Booker in the same shift, then Michigan State becomes finesse. Then Jaden Akins does press because he's not getting great screens. I'm just going to say it. You know, Booker does not set good screens. So like when those guys are all playing together, it puts a lot of pressure on Akins to make some things happen. But I don't know what the fix is for him aside from making a few shots. And we've seen him do this before. Like he'll go into practice and they'll say, "Oh, he did one small adjustment with his shot mechanics and he'll be fine." And
You
and
talking
that's what
about
Michigan
Booker?
State's
Who
got to
you
hope for.
talking about? Booker?
Jaden Akins.
Oh,
But I'm just
Akins.
saying, like, I would just say he's not in a situation where he can just create for himself when he's got 2 soft players on the floor with him. And I think that's not always the easy thing for him as well. But so I'm
Mhm.
jumping all over a few different things, but I think Michigan
Yeah.
State's more physical than they were last year. They're not completely finesse. I think they're going to be fine in the Big Ten as it is this year with some of the changes we've seen. Watch Purdue last night. They're a totally different team than they were last year. But I also think Michigan State's going to be able to get it done in different ways. They do have to hit a certain amount of threes, but they don't have to hit as many threes as they needed to last year, or hit as many perimeter jumpers as they needed to last year, given that roster, in my opinion.
Hmm. I give Fiddler credit for getting the free throw line 8 times, 3 out of 12 from the floor. He was cold for the most part. also had a real nice Euro step in transition when Michigan State was trying to stay in it. As far as Booker goes, I did the numbers real quick. For the year, he's 1 out of 11 from 3-point range, 5 of 22 from the field overall. And like you said, I mean, he's he's a finesse guy that's supposed to score and finish in the transition here and there. Had a nice block shot today at a key moment when they're trying to post up Akins against Dickinson. Um, but he's got a decent shot release, and he's been a streak shooter and had some moments here and there. I've never been sold on him actually being a good perimeter shooter. It could happen at some point in his career. He's not that right now. He's similar to what you said, like Marcus Bingham, who was supposed to be a 3-point shooter, you know, as he developed and never quite became better than a 25% 3-point shooter, therefore never really had the green light to shoot. Booker does have the green light to shoot. Said coming into this game, he would get openings, needed to have them go down. They did not. They got to the point where Kansas was sagging off of him and letting him shoot. Booker had an early 3-pointer in the corner. Kohler had an early 3-pointer in the corner, missed both. That was when Michigan State was doing screen roll, because one of Kansas's weaknesses is screen roll defense, like you pointed out a few days ago when Dickinson plays drop coverage, and that puts them at a deficit if you attack that. And then a tag helper comes, and then you throw to the player that the tag helper left. And Michigan State was getting that in the left corner early on, getting the shots they wanted, missing. And we've always said that for Izzo's teams, you need to have that stretch four that can shoot, that Joey Hauser type. We've listed them over the years. And when Hauser became hot and turned the corner as a player, that's when that collection of players turned the corner and made a run into the Sweet 16 and was within overtime of getting to the Elite Eight. Without a stretch four, making shots, that puts a lot of that makes it difficult for the rest of the offense to function. As far as the rest of the offense goes, and by the way, Booker only played 13 minutes tonight. And if he continues to shoot like this, it doesn't come around in other areas, this won't be the last time that he has a game like this with precious few minutes. I'm not surprised that he played few minutes today. My prediction was that he was going to get bumper card all over the place by KJ Adams and have problems in that regard and end up sitting because of that. Maybe there was some of that going on as well. Michigan State was pretty happy with what they did defensively against KJ Adams, but instead it was the missed shots and maybe some of those other things as well. Booker gets one rebound in 13 minutes with that 6'11" frame. Izzo made the point that if you're not shooting well, be like Zeke Mayo. Zeke Mayo didn't shoot well today. He went out, got 10 rebounds, 7 assists, got to the free throw line. That's what Izzo says he's going to challenge Akins and Booker and Holloman to do, is find other ways if your shot's not falling. Trey Holloman got some shots as well. He had an opportunity to give them a lift. When he gets on the court, Kansas had their starters in there, 4 minutes into the game, and right away, Holloman was bringing some speed, some counter break quickness. He's got that athleticism and exuberance. He can give Michigan State a lift 4 minutes into the game when he checks in when the opposing starters are just starting to get a little bit winded, because all starters get a little bit winded at that 4-minute mark. And Michigan State visibly was quicker than Kansas for a couple minutes there. And a couple minutes here and there, that can get you a couple points, get you a little 5-0 run. Could be the difference in ending up winning a game or losing a game if you get 2 or 3 of those throughout the course of the game. Holloman gave them some RPMs, gave them some fuel, but didn't finish in terms of points when that was going on. So I think that the Michigan State's initial wave of second stringers can be a plus for them, can be a strength, but at the same time, you got to make some shots. Kohler, did a good job at the post. They went to him a couple times at the post, hit that 3-pointer as a trailer, and helped to bring him back to tie the game on 2 occasions. Kohler did. So they were riding Kohler there for a while. It's good to see Kohler do some things, and I don't want to say carry the team, but for a brief moment of time, the offense went through him, and he delivered against a team that offers a lot of resistance in there in the paint. So Kohler made some progress overall. Did you agree?
Yeah, yes and no, because he was also a problem with the perimeter shooting. He's the one guy, like when you look at the bigs, I've seen him shoot enough where I think, like you say, Booker's a streak shooter. I agree with you. I mean, he might not come around. He may come around. Kohler's the one guy I've seen for the last 2 years hit 3 after 3 after 3 in practice. I know he can do it in games. And he had a lot of open looks tonight, and that's a guy that like his missed threes tonight were just as big as any. And because I feel like he hit the one to tie it, but he also missed several prior to that, and he missed a bunch. Missed a couple, at least one after he tied it. at 52-52, I think it was. But
Yeah, he's
Kohler,
one. He was 1 out of 5 from 3-point range for the night. So yeah, he had chances.
right? So, but the one thing that he does that I'll give him credit is he does crash. You know, when that
Hmm.
shot goes up and if he doesn't make it, he doesn't sit around and wait for it. He goes after it and he's aggressive, and I give him props for that. One of the reasons why Booker got pulled from this game, where he played as few minutes as he did, there was at one time in the first half where I think the game was tied, and he missed the three, and he was jogging back, and the guy that got the defensive rebound for Kansas blew past him, scored at the rim, and I think it ended up being a 3-point play.
I didn't
That's
notice that.
something that
Good point.
that's something
Yeah,
they've been working on him for a long time. And you're the furthest away from the rim, okay? And you're Xavier Booker. You're the furthest away from the rim. And when that guy gets that defensive rebound, who is he attacking? He's attacking you because you're the weak link in transition. And so that's why I go back to my point. And I don't want to rip on him because I think I think he has grown a ton. I think he still has a lot of growing to do. But if you're consistently not, it's the same thing with Kenny Kaminsky back in the day. Worst example, if Kenny's not making shots, there's nothing else he can do for you. But if you're getting blown by after missing a 3-pointer and you're jogging back and your head's in the wrong place and you're getting blown by and your team is giving up a 3-point play, I don't know who got called for the foul on that either. But when you got point guards that are in foul trouble, at the end of the game, and you could use those fouls, so you can play maximum effort on defense. Those are the kind of little things that add up, and it's not a little thing because it's a huge thing. And when you blow by someone after they miss and you score in transition, that can really open it up for the other team. And Kansas did make a little run there at the end of the first half. Up 10 points until Jace Richardson does his thing and has a Drew Neitzel like 4-point play as a
hmm
freshman. Drew Neitzel
hmm
senior like 4-point play, but Jace Richardson as a freshman, and that he is one guy that has a shot and the shot release and the way the arc is on the ball. That I don't care what kind of length he's playing against, he's going to be able to get his shot off, and that was a pretty looking
right.
shot. And
And
maybe
and
they should do
Richardson
more
just
for him in the future.
and Richardson just continues to play beyond his years. Um, he was Michigan State's best player in the first half. Ends up playing 20 minutes, 3 rebounds, 8 points. Night after night, he's making good decisions. Had a real nice decision on that when I think it was Fears was getting caught. Almost had a 5-second violation, and Richardson makes a cut, passes it to Richardson making a cut, and then Richardson extra pass for a layup or a dunk for somebody. Um, IQ, skill. He's got some physical opponents that has enabled him to play right away and make a dent right away as a freshman. And Richardson, frankly, he's doing a lot of great things, and that helps give Michigan State some hope. As far as Kohler goes, for the year, 3 out of 10 from 3-point range, 30%, almost above that Mendoza line of productivity of 33%. 33% is definitely productive. You're right; he's got a good shot release. He has it in him to become a 37%, 38% 3-point shooter. They get that from him from the 4 and the 5, and deliver some things inside as well. That would be a big boost for this team that is going to struggle to find go-to offensive weaponry this year, especially if Akins continues to slide. Kohler becomes more and more important. Simone Zapala starting at the 5 again, plays 18 minutes, 3 rebounds, 4 points, scored once in the post real well on like a post extension shot at a key moment off the glass, looked pretty good with that, and they went right to him on that one. Guarding Dickinson. Dickinson always looks like Wilt Chamberlain in the first 10 minutes of a game, just making all the shots. And like I wrote in the pre-snap read, then he starts, or the pre-tip read, he starts missing shots later in the game. As he gets winded, he starts missing some of those 5-footers. He ended up having a very productive night, of course, had a great game, but he scores 28. But I thought Zapala played pretty good defense early on, even though, Dickinson was hitting some effortless hook shots and so forth. It's not like Dickinson was like backing him down and getting down within 2 feet and just burying him and destroying him in the low post. I thought that Michigan State made Dickinson, make some hook shots, high percentage shots for him, but not 90%, get out of my way. I'm just laying it in and dunking on you. I thought even though Dickinson got off to a great start over Zapala, I didn't think Zapala was bad with post defense. What was your read on that?
Yeah, I feel like he was firmer than I expected for a guy that's never played against a post player like that. And I honestly think to be completely 100% truthful, Michigan State needs a guy, the 7-footer who's big and strong, to tenderize or to be the more opening act for Kohler to come in at the size he is. Because if you put Kohler out there to start, he's going to expend all that
That's right.
spaz energy that he has
That's right.
on Hunter Dickinson. He's going to pick up
Mhm.
2 or 3 fouls. In a situation like this, it's so much more productive to have Kohler come in with the footwork, the post moves, all the kind of like the different things that he can do against a big man that's a little bit tired. And we've seen Izzo do this before in the past. And people are like, "Oh, why isn't this guy starting?" When you look at the numbers, it's not about that. It's about how can you get the roster that you have to be the most productive. And I think Simone Zapala is a has been a really nice addition.
Yeah.
And I felt like even the second half adjustment when he came out there and Dickinson tried to attack him on one of those early possessions in the second half, and he tried to get physical with Zapala, and I felt like Simone like really stuck his chest out there, was not moved, and that was a really positive thing. And I also think by him starting, that enables Michigan State to take advantage of some of the things that Carson Cooper can do.
Yeah.
And Carson Cooper had one of his best games tonight.
It is.
And I feel like Michigan State did as much as like people want to talk about Hunter Dickinson led Kansas to victory, and he had a great game for them. He was the most productive player out there, but he was tired enough throughout this game where he had to step in a certain direction. Michigan State had someone filling in where he was able to get to the ball to him. And as many points as he scored, in some ways he also gave up points. He would have given up
Exactly
even
right.
more points if Michigan State would have hit open jumpers. He is
Yes.
what he is. He's a guy that looks very good in the stat sheet, but he's limited. If he wasn't limited, if he didn't have lead feet, he'd be in the NBA making money there. He's making money at Kansas. He's a great college player, but he's never going to be anything more than that. And he can't get out there on the perimeter. You saw him try. I saw him try to do that against North Carolina a few times. Like try to get out there and hedge, not deep or anything like that, but they just destroyed him
Mhm.
behind him. Michigan State was able to do the same thing. You got some
Mhm.
stuff going to the rim, and
Yeah.
you saw it even I think a little bit more because Flory Badunga was in foul trouble, so Dickinson had to play 35 minutes tonight. For Kansas to be the best version of themselves, they can't afford to have Dickinson playing that many minutes. He is a liability, and as good
Yeah.
as he was in the stat sheet, Michigan State I think effectively exploited a lot of his weaknesses. And I think Michigan State's collective post players they did all right tonight. They had
Mhm.
20 points, a good amount of rebounds. So there's not a huge disparity. Yeah, Michigan State doesn't have one player that can do what Dickinson can do scoring, but he's got that Nick Ward game to him. He looks good in an offense, but you give up a lot on
Mhm.
defense, and he looked really slow on a few occasions, and he
Yeah.
was laboring. So,
Yeah, Michigan State went right at that. Michigan State's screen roll game was good. Like you said, the drop coverage. Michigan State was throwing the lob over the top. Cooper had a couple dunks, missed a lay in. Zapala had one. One time they went screen roll, replaced the card, and Card drove off of it. All of that action. And I mentioned the tag, the tag leakage when you're giving up open corners. You're exactly right. They went at the Dickin the weaknesses that Dickinson has, got shots out of it, and not enough shots fell. But like you said, Cooper, I mean, Cooper scores, 4 points, 5 rebounds, 15 minutes, solid. And you make a great point that Zapala, like in baseball, he's not like a starter. He's more of an opener. He gets you to the middle innings and he checks back in. And I don't remember him ever being a weakness. But Cooper comes in and might have been Michigan State's second best player in the first half behind Richardson. And Cooper's able to do that because he's coming in fresh as a daisy and doing some things. And I think you hit the nail on the head. So Zapala playing a good role, doing some good things, and providing a pretty good role there. Now, Paul, looking forward, they've got what Bowling Green coming up. Is that this Friday or Saturday? I'm not really sure. Let me look at it right now. And then they play what Samford after that. They play Bowling Green Saturday at 6 o'clock, and then Samford the following Tuesday, November 19th. Then they're off for 6 days before going out to Maui. So Michigan State coming home. You're assuming they'll go ahead and get these 2 victories at home. Not very often you see Michigan State play games against MAC opponents anymore. And correct me if I'm wrong about that, but it doesn't happen very often. Bowling Green's making the trip. So Michigan State's got a chance. Try to get Akins, get his shot going, get some more confidence for Trey Holloman, get him wired into his role and being an energizer guy coming off the bench and providing some things. And Kohler, if he can get that 3-point shot above 33%, that would be a great thing as well. What would you look for in these two games as they get ready to go to Maui? And if they can beat Colorado in the Maui game, you're looking at UConn possibly. I think that's Tuesday of Thanksgiving week against UConn. That could be a big one. That'll be the next time Michigan State has a chance to really test themselves. That'll be a really good midterm exam right before a couple of Big Ten games. Your thoughts on the coming opponents at home at the Breslin Center, Bowling Green and Samford?
I wouldn't sleep on Colorado. I think, they're not the Ricardo Patton Colorado of yesteryear. I think they do some good stuff. The Michigan State will have to play well in that game. I wouldn't sleep on Bowling Green either because, that's a guy that knows Tom Izzo well. Todd Simon, former UNLV assistant, was at Southern Utah, I believe it was, a guy from the state of Michigan, a really good young head coach, and I think he's got a bright future out of him. But very familiar with what Michigan State does, I feel like I haven't looked at that roster, but a lot of those guys from Ohio are underrated coming up, and they'll probably have some good talent. So I'd watch out there. But I just think Michigan State needs to get some shots falling. They've got to work on effort and energy for Xavier Booker. That's something that he's really, and they've got the carrot of playing time. One of the other things I'd be really interested to see is I feel like Cohen Carr's taken some steps with the on-ball defense. He's gotten better, but there's still a couple times that he kind of falls asleep a little bit. And I think he gave up a three in the corner to the dude that transferred in from Alabama. I think he was a little bit caught off guard on that tonight, but I just think they need to do. Everyone needs to be a little bit better versions of themselves, and then I think they got a chance in Maui. One of the things that I think both Michigan State and Kansas are both going through is they have a lot of different players. Both teams do. Kansas got a ton of different bodies, and it's just getting acclimated, getting used to playing in a large playing group. But Michigan State, everybody needs to do their roles a little bit better, and that's what I'm looking for in these next two games before they go to Maui because they got to get some threes up. They got to get the stretch component, and I think they're going to get the running game going a little bit in Maui. I thought Kansas did a pretty good job with transition defense tonight. I thought Kansas did a pretty good job, with some of their defense overall. Besides some of the stuff we are talking about giving up by Hunter Dickinson that they can't help. But I think Michigan State just needs to get a little confidence in the jump shot. That's what these next two games are for. And then also just get a little bit better at everything.
Yeah, Michigan State free throw shooting was good, 18 out of 21. Field goal percentage defense holds them to 40%. Rebounding was okay. Izzo wanted more. A lot of those were pretty decent, but 3 out of 24 from 3-point range, as we said, really difficult to overcome that. Carson Cooper, one other note, he led the team in plus minus with a +4. I know that stat's a little bit controversial. It doesn't mean everything all the time, but your point about Zabala being a good opener allows Cooper to be effective coming off the bench. So some decent things for Michigan State against a talented Kansas team. Michigan State can leave here. They did leave here thinking, man, all we got to do is make shots. We make shots. We know we can make shots. We're basketball players. We can do that. That's what they're going to think. That's what confident basketball players think. So to them, it's easier to correct that than some of those other things. Some of the other things were decent. Got to build on it, get these 2 wins. Michigan State does against Bowling Green and Samford. Get ready to go to Maui, do some damage out there. Anything else, Paul? Jeremy Fears, he plays 27 minutes, 3 out of 8 from the field, 3 out of 5 on free throws. Once again, doing a good job getting into the lane, making things happen. 6 assists, 2 turnovers. A couple of times he took some shots Izzo didn't like, a little overzealous here and there, led to some runouts. If he just had a medium range jumper that could help tie things together, and even as a range shooter, man, he'd be just a tremendous player. As it is, he's a very good floor general, point guard, and all those things coming along as a young player. Not an all around player yet, but what'd you think about the way he played tonight?
I think it was okay. I think it was a B performance by him, but it was an important B performance against good personnel. It's one thing to do it against mid-major guards, but you're going against a team like Kansas that has length, and so I almost said that I didn't like his performance, but I'm gonna revise that in my head right now because I've seen a lot of because he hasn't played that many games against really good opponents. I mean, truthfully,
True, true.
given all the time that he had off last year, sometimes it's hard to sometimes
It's
it's
like his
easy to
first
overlook
one.
that.
This is like his real first extended minutes in
Yeah.
an opponent like this. Yeah, great point.
So you think I think of guys like Cassius Winston, like when he played in these big games early on in his career, even as a starter, like some of those games were really gnarly. And
Took him a
Denzel
while.
Valentine, or just you can go to Drew Knights and you go down the list. When you're playing against a team that has length, and has athleticism, it's really hard when you're a point guard. And especially when you want, because you can't practice, you can't simulate what they've got. And so I think he did. I think he did okay. One other thing I think is kind of like you go back to the free throw shooting percentage. Michigan State's bigs are shooting better, more efficient from the free throw line. So you can say I'd argue that Carson Cooper is the most important player in the first half. Jace Richardson had a great game, but Carson Cooper got some of the easy stuff done at the rim, caught the ball, and he also hit free throws. That hasn't been his forte. So if you got Zapala, you got Carson Cooper, you got Jackson Kohler hitting free throws, you're ahead of where you were last year a little bit in that area. So that's one of the things that that hidden free throw um, kind of stat is that everybody shot well from the free throw line. Even Cohen Carr. So those are all type of positive things that they can take moving forward. But that's all I got.
All right, Paul. I appreciate your insight. Appreciate your help back home. I'll see you soon. Anything else? That's it. All right, for Paul Kondak, my name is Jim Comparoni from Atlanta, Georgia. Paul back home in the state of Michigan with the Spartans. Go watch the VCast, SpartanMag.com.